Hello, international entrepreneurs. Bom dia, boa tarde ou boa noite, wherever you may be. Welcome to From Rio to ROI, the channel that helps international entrepreneurs do business either with Brazil or in Brazil. The topic of today's video: can I do business in Brazil speaking only Spanish? And the plain answer to that is yes and no. So you may be thinking, what kind of answer is that? Yes and no. Well, it's not as easy as it sounds because yes, you can do business in Brazil speaking only Spanish, but that only gets you up to a very short point, right? You would be better served doing business only in Portuguese. And to get a little bit more into this discussion, I am going to basically explain to you why speaking only Spanish to do business in Brazil is not really the best approach you want to go with, right? It's going to give you some results that are not optimal. So to begin with, Brazil and Portuguese come from the same language branch, right? Which they're both known as Romance languages. And being Romance languages, they actually share what's called a lexical similarity. So that's basically the vocabulary that they share between them, right? There is a very strong similarity. Some studies have said that the lexical similarity between Spanish and Portuguese is about 89%, right? And that's when we're talking about European Portuguese and European Spanish. When we move to the South American continent, it starts to move apart very quickly. And a large reason for that is because of the African influence and the native, the languages of the native people that were found here in Brazil by the Europeans when they came here to Brazil. They have a large and outsized influence on the Portuguese spoken here in Brazil, right? So what I'm going to tell you is just from a practical side, right? When my wife and I first came to Brazil the first time, my wife, she spoke Spanish pretty fluently because she actually taught Spanish in the United States at university, right? And the first time we came to Brazil, we're like, hey, Portuguese and Spanish, they're pretty close. I think, we can try to get by, just speaking Spanish. And we did to a point. And here is the point. The point is this. We found that when we spoke Spanish, Brazilians generally understood. However, Brazilians did not respond in Spanish, they responded in Portuguese. And there was some of the vocabulary that we didn't understand, but particularly hard to understand was the intonation. There are a lot of sounds in Brazilian Portuguese that don't exist in Spanish, and that's what throws you off. And it throws off not just me, a native English speaker who learned to speak Spanish, it also throws off native Spanish speakers here, right here in South America, to the point that there are estimates that in a conversation between a Brazilian and, let's say, for example, someone from Colombia, that the Brazilian will tend to understand what the Colombian says. Roughly, maybe they'll understand maybe about anywhere from 75% to 90% of what is being said in Spanish, assuming that that person is speaking Spanish slowly and not using a lot of slang or dialect. On the other side, the Colombian person in the conversation probably will understand anywhere between 30 to 50% of what the Brazilian is saying. And the reason for that is exactly as I explained. There are sounds in Brazilian Portuguese that are unknown to native Spanish speakers here in South America. So this leaves a lot of room for error and misunderstanding, especially in a business setting, right? And what I have seen here, because I have visited, there have been international fairs I have attended right here in Brazil, where I remember in a B2B meeting between A lot of Spanish speakers from Chile, from Uruguay, from Paraguay, meeting with Brazilians. And I remember on those one-on-one conversations, there was a lot of struggling and a lot of Brazilian, basically asking the Spanish speaker to repeat what they said. And that's because they were trying to do the communication speaking sort of like a Portuñol, which is a mix of Spanish and Portuguese. So as you can see, that's not the ideal thing, not the ideal situation. There's a lot of opportunity for things to get lost in translation. So if you ask me, can I do business in Brazil speaking only Spanish? You could try to do that and you would get up to a certain point, but you leave yourself open to many errors being committed. And on top of that, you are really blocking yourself out from accessing other parts of the market in Brazil that you can only access via speaking Brazilian Portuguese, right? So I will tell you, as someone who started learning to speak Portuguese in 2012, that yes, in the beginning it's tough, it's hard, especially for a native English speaker. That was like, I remember waking up mornings with headaches, because I'm only getting this foreign language. It's like a static, but I can tell you, once you stick to it, right, and you keep going at it, eventually one day what's going to happen? One day you're going to wake up, and just like with me, you're going to be watching TV. There's going to be a comedy show on. Someone's going to tell a joke. You're going to laugh automatically. And then, boom, that's when it hits you. You're like, oh my goodness, I can speak the language. I am fluent in it. I understood that joke as if it was being told in English, right? Trust me, it's one of the best feelings you'll ever feel as a language learner, right? And so this is why I can tell you, it is so worth it. Even if you know Spanish, my advice to you would be really go that extra distance and learn Portuguese. There is one caveat. If you have learned to speak Spanish as a native English speaker, one of the problems you'll run into, because I saw this happen with my wife, was that you're going to find in your head, you're mixing up some of those Spanish words with the Portuguese words, and you're going to kind of do a natural Portuñol, right? And that is okay. That is fine. You will be perfectly okay with a Portuñol here in Brazil. But really make that effort. It is going to pay so much dividends for you here in the future, because my belief, what I have seen here, my experience here in Brazil, if you really want to unlock all of the great things this country has that the world out there does not know about, you need to have this language. The language is the key to open the doors. And there are a lot of doors here that you guys have no idea exist, right? So guys, let me know what you think about this video. Let me know your thoughts. Are you a native Spanish speaker and think that you're going to come to Brazil to speak Spanish to everyone? Or are you going to take the shot and learn Portuguese? Let me know in the comments down below. Like and subscribe to my channel, right? And guys, I'm going to catch you a little bit later with new content. Thanks a lot.